Hey guys, how's it going? So, there's a lot of content out there where they talk about narcissistic parenting, and I think the reason being is, we all had different hands growing up. My hand was really, I guess it was a mixed bag. I grew up in a normal household, financially wise, so we weren't penny pitching or we weren't really struggling all that much. My mom and my dad were very responsible in the financial realm. But there were parts where they did fail. And with me specifically, because not to toot my own horn, but I was the more well behaved of the two kids. My brother caused a ton of problems. The cops in the valley knew my last name because I was related to my brother. Let's just be real. They never had to pick me up from a police station, but my brother was a different story. He was always getting into something else. And it was so bad to the point where insurance companies were afraid to cover my family because they knew my brother was related to us. So sometimes my brother, like he always used to say, "Oh, don't be such a goody two shoes." But the thing that he didn't realize is I was picking up the slack for both brothers growing up. It actually got to the point where I tested to get into a private school, and then I was thrown into the mix with a lot of super upper class kids who were super disconnected from reality. And you're thrust into that narcissistic environment where kids are never held accountable. They're their parents' special kids. I remember one kid crashed the Mercedes she got for her 16th birthday, and then her daddy bought her a whole new one, right? No punishment, just bought her a whole new one. And I was the only one with really a sense of responsibility in that realm. Now there were some other people who had their feet on planet Earth over there. I'm not saying all wealthy people are oblivious to reality. There are actually some wealthy people who I would have conversations with who we were in the right mindset, where it's like some of the people who were successful because they had a sense of reality. They were very down to earth. But I met all sorts of characters in that realm that almost made it so I was questioning my reality. But however, I think what I could get to is when I was a kid, I started packing on weight. When I was in the fifth grade, I moved to a different school. I lost all my friends from elementary school, and I got sad, so I cried. And at school, actually. And I remember that second week after when we were going for Labor Day weekend, I was so excited for a 3-day weekend. That night, my mom and my brother didn't say anything. Now, my mom had a very condescending tone, like, "Okay, you could get used to your school then if you, like the way that the car is starting to smell like your classroom." Like she was just seemed very disappointed, and I couldn't put two and two together as a kid. Then my dad comes home and then comes in to see me and asks if I had a bad day, and I didn't know what that was all about. I didn't know what he was pertaining to, but I got whooped with a belt pretty hard that night for crying. And then fast forward, as the chubby kid, I was taking on a lot of bullying, and as you take on all of that bullying and you're shown not to show weakness and you start to second guess every emotion you had, specifically because of that one punishment that you never saw coming out of nowhere. I just remember getting grounded and my parents talking to me like I was the worst thing to ever happen to this family, as I was being grounded just because I showed emotion growing up. But I I fast forward to ninth grade, and I finally start having some really bad behavioral issues, and they throw me to a therapist. You need to fix our kid for us. So I was put on medication, told that I was bipolar, that nothing I said could ever be trusted. So I went through a lot of my teenage years my parents not listening to me. After I had gotten into a private school because I didn't want them to have to worry about another kid causing problems, because I used to see my mom break down crying because of how much trouble my brother was causing. But I was always getting mixed signals. And then anytime me and my mom had a disagreement, she would say things like, "You're manic, you don't know what you're talking about." Like, she used my diagnosis as a weapon at her convenience. Some days it was when we were arguing, I was bipolar and I was insane. I didn't know what I was talking about. And then when it was convenient for her to try and get herself out of trouble, it's like, my son's bipolar. So it almost made me feel objectified until my mid-20s, past college. Those doubts about my own reality caused me to lose out on a lot of experiences, a lot of relationships, a lot of things like that. So the way my parents failed kind of had a slow burn on me. But midway through my 20s, I got out of another relationship, and my mom was again talking to me like I was an inconvenience for asking her for guidance. And it got to the point where I finally blew up in a rage where I completely unloaded on her. And we had to go to family therapy. And I refused to take medication and all that stuff, and I refused to say that it was because I was bipolar. But the obvious thing that I woke up to was I had really bad luck with my environments and people not wanting to ever accept responsibility, specifically my parents, at least in that aspect. Because, yeah, did I have food on the table? Yeah. Did I have a bed to sleep in? Yeah. But for the most part, I was mainly raised by my TV. I was mainly raised by my video games. Looking back, it was almost like Nightcrawler, where he's looking at these things, trying to find out what is an authentic human emotion. What is this? What is that? Because my mom was always cleaning, and then she wanted to go watch New Jersey Housewives or something like that. But our parents failed in some aspect or another. I'm using my backstory not as a feel sorry for me, but because it's helped me realize something. Because after I pulled myself out of that schizophrenic rut where I had no security as a person whatsoever, I second guessed everything I did up until I started doing martial arts, where my first teacher told me everything you do second guesses yourself, and this analysis paralysis that follows you around keeps you from living your life altogether, not just with martial arts. And it was some of the best advice I've ever come up with, or actually some of the best advice I've ever heard, where I said, you know what? I think you're right. And that's actually what fixed a lot of my problems in life. And now I'm, doing really well. I started doing blue collar work. I started working with computers. I have IT certs and everything like that. But also it taught me the biggest lesson is, after this whole thing, why did my parents specifically fail in that aspect? You got to look around at the modern times. And this could mirror what your problems were with your family, whether they were not as bad, just as bad, or worse. I know some people who grew up where they had to be put in foster care because their parents were lunatics. So I'm not saying I have it worse. I'm not saying this, again, because I want you to feel sorry. I'm not saying this because I feel like I've had it super hard. I just am hoping this could strike a tune with you, and you could fit this into your life, whether it's a better circumstance or a worse circumstance. But looking at the times we live in now, I don't think our parents had this in mind when they raised us. Like, my family probably was expecting me to be married with kids and a full-on career at this point, in a corporation somewhere, in a cubicle, waking up every Monday through Friday with a suit and a tie and all that stuff. Like, I realize a lot of the things my father groomed me for never ended up really coming to fruition, because I wear worn out jeans and t-shirts to do manual labor every day. I weld, I pipe fitted, I've done a lot of different things. And I got into that because, well, a lot of what we have in modern day doesn't fit what our parents wanted for us. And I think that that could be where our past equalizes with our future. Because we did have to, in a sense, figure it out ourselves, especially if you had parents that were very out of touch with how we were doing, or they only stood in to criticize us, or they weren't even present at all. There's a lot of single parent households out there. But a lot of us did just kind of have to wing it, figure out, because we never had those solid guides, those solid role models that pointed us, this is the direction you're supposed to go. And it's not a painless route to take, but I think it's a route that definitely has made at least me a little more stoic in that sense, where I'm starting to see the greater picture where, yeah, no, it didn't work out in the past like this, because looking forward at what society has become in this kind of dystopia where everyone's sucked into their social media, nobody cares about each other. My mind, at least in my mind path, was conditioned to look after myself and have to validate myself, because you look at the normal everyday person and a lot of people like to invalidate each other and like to step on anybody who's doing a good job and, tend to want to drag people down instead of lifting themselves up to super big heights. And yeah, I started to see it, that our parents did have to fail. At least in some senses, or every sense. Like I said, probably some of you that have had way worse parents than mine were. Mine still succeeded in certain realms, but they definitely failed in certain aspects. But I just want you to know why you could relate to this. That the future is now. And we are living in some sort of shift, whether you believe it's the biblical end times or not. Where we are going to be doing things way differently. And you don't picture, if you were to be guided the way you thought you were supposed to, you would have been underprepared anyway. I think now I've been more open-minded to how I'm supposed to do things, because then I can mix and match, because my parents have moved away from me at this point, and I am someone who looks after himself, basically mainly alone for the most part. And I feel like the past has definitely prepared me for this future. And I think you guys can too. I just think what's very important is not to give in to the sense that we're all doomed. Now, some of us who won't break through the coding or the zeitgeist, right? Yeah, definitely those people are going to be in for a little bit of a shock, because they're ignorant and things happen to ignorant people who don't look out in front of them or don't look at the obvious elephant in the room. The people who are able to see it and who can understand that are going to be able to take lemons and turn it into a glass of lemonade. We're going to be more prepared, more emotionally equipped, and more mentally equipped to handle this world, this dystopian social media world. But that's just my thought process. That's why I honestly think a lot of our parents had to fail, at least in one aspect. But what do you think? What's your backstory? And how does it fit into the current future you are living in today? Peace out.